very good at it. He's got a low centre of gravity, and he can be very elusive and explosive, and that's what we've kind of lacked.
Yeah. All right, moving to the defense. I think what's really going to be interesting is the 3 technique position. And I was looking at the Raiders website, and they have Mario Edwards as a defensive end, which is interesting. So
Yeah,
he might back up Mac on the outside, but if he doesn't, 3 technique. You have Maurice Hurst, Leon Hall, PJ Hall, my bad, Hester and Mario, and I think out of the 4, I think 3 makes the team. So obviously, your top draft pick Hurst and Hall is going to make the team. It's going to be between Hester, Vanderdoes, and Mario. I think 2 of the 3 makes the team, to be honest with you.
yeah, that's a tough one. See, Eddie is a frustrating sort of player because he'll show flashes of brilliance, and then at other points in time he'll just look like a liability.
Yeah, he has a higher ceiling than Hester, but he has an injury history. And Hester played well last year, so it's tough.
Yeah, I personally would go with Hester.
Really?
I think this is a safer bet, really. Just because, as you said, the injuries as well. It's tough when a player's consistently getting injured. It does take a toll on their, on their body, first and foremost.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. But you know what? I don't think we might see Calhoun or Kauser back this year, because you're looking at defensive ends. We'll probably carry 4 or 5 defensive ends. You already have Mac, Irvin, and Key, right?
Yeah.
And Tank Carradine is better than both Calhoun and Kauser. So there's your 4 right there. And
also Mario Edwards could move over to that point as well.
If they have him at defensive end, it could be Mario Edwards. So
I think that would make sense, really.
Yeah, Kauser is probably gone. Calhoun's going to be gone.
Yeah. But would you be disappointed?
Nah.
Not really, no. This is it, Some of these players just haven't cut it.
Yeah, so that's our roster looking like. Quarterback, let's finish up with quarterback. You got Conley and Rashawn Melvin starting. Gilchrist as more of a slot quarterback, and our draft pick Nelson. Nick Nelson will probably back up Gilchrist.
Yeah.
John Gruden really likes Sharice Wright, so he's probably gonna make the roster. I think there's a battle between Dexter McDonald, Worley, and Hall, probably, to see who makes the roster.
I think Worley makes the roster.
Yeah, Worley makes it, and I think Wright makes it. I think depends if we do 5 defensive back base, we might carry another cornerback. I don't know, and Dexter McDonald might get a chance, but for now, that's what we got, man. Conley, Melvin, Wright, Nelson, Gilchrist, Worley, and maybe Dexter, but or maybe that's it. You know what's really scaring me was the free safety position, because I think Vic Tafer tweeted out saying, Joseph might not even make the starting roster because they're not sure how they feel about him. I don't know. I think it's too early to say something like that, but
yeah. Well, also don't forget you've given up a first-round pick on that guy as well. So
yes, and it's Vic. I just say move him to free safety. He's too small to play strong safety. Obviously, he's going to get taken advantage of by bigger tight ends.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem. Right, you're playing a free safety as a strong safety. That is the problem in itself. I'll bet you any money you switch him over to free safety and you'd see a different player.
Yeah. Yep. So right now you got OB, you got Carl Joseph, you got Shalom Luani. Yeah, you have Gilchrist who can play safety as well. But man, you think Nelson or Harris makes the team? Reggie Nelson and the roster is going to suck.
Yeah, I don't think I could bear watching that geezer play.
If he makes it as a backup
honest.
just because we don't have any... But, there's a bunch of safeties in the free market right now that's better than both of these guys.
There's Reed, there's Vaccaro, there's a few of them.
I would just bring one of those guys in and let Nelson go, man.
I'd have Reed.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric Reed over Nelson, it's not even
a debate, is it?
No.
Yeah, and the money isn't going to be that ridiculous now because obviously it's at a point where he needs to find a team to play for.
Yeah.
So the money isn't going to be as high as it was, so it makes more sense.
Yeah, and running it out, linebacker, you got Derek, Tahir, and Nicholas. You got Lee. It's going to be a battle between and Kauser, I think, is playing. It's tuning up with the linebacker, so he might, if he makes a team, he might be strong side linebacker. I don't know, but it's going to be a nice battle between Kauser, Azim Victor, and Kabinda. And
I can see Kabinda taking that spot.
Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, we'll be back. We'll be back again next week, or maybe this weekend. But we are leaving you with a interview with Thor. What's his last name? I forget.
Nystrom.
Thor Nystrom from Rotoworld. He breaks down the Raiders draft, and it's not pretty, but take a listen. But it's all analysis. Only time will tell how the draft was. So enjoy the interview. Take it easy. We'll talk to you again soon, and we'll try to get somebody a nice guest on for you next time. All right, take care.
Yeah, take care, man.
Column B.
Yeah. So what's your take on Brandon Parker? Because obviously we traded up to take him with the first pick in the 3rd round. And I'm looking at these names that went after him. Lorenzo Carter, defensive end. Chad Thomas, defensive end. Justin Reed, safety. Fred Warner. Nathan Shepard. I'm looking at these guys and I'm thinking, why did we reach for an offensive tackle when you've got this sort of talent on the ball?
And
Justin Reed. That's crazy.
And there are better offensive linemen on the board, too, I think. The guy from Pittsburgh and the guy from Ohio. So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
There's Geron Christian of Louisville. And there was a few others as well, So, I mean, even Orlando Brown is probably a better prospect.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah,
we took Brandon Parker, number 1, in the 3rd round, and you've got players like that on the board. That pick just does not make sense to me whatsoever. Some people may disagree with me, but the names I've just read out are a lot better talent, in my opinion. I mean, Justin Reed, the safety, how did he not get taken to the 3rd round? He's a brilliant talent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had Justin Reed as a late 1st-round prospect, so you're preaching to the choir. And as far as the offensive tackles you mentioned, I had Orlando Brown as the 5th offensive tackle. I had Christian as the 6th. And Brandon Parker I had as the 14th and the 160th player overall. Now, listen, I'm not trying to say, people will say, oh, you think you're smarter than the Raiders. I do not think I'm smarter than the Raiders. But it's just my job to evaluate these guys, and that's where I came down on it. Here's my thing with Parker. He is essentially Colton Miller, except an FCS version who's not as good of an athlete, but they have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses. Like I mentioned, Parker's sort of an average athlete, whereas Miller's sort of an exceptional athlete. But Parker is also a very large, long player with a big wingspan, and he also struggles with leverage, and it hurts his. In the same way we were talking about with Colton Miller. Colton Miller, if you just put him in a vacuum or put him in a phone booth, his power would just be what it is. It'd be better than it actually is. But because he gives up the leverage game on the field, it doesn't translate in the way that it should. And it's the same thing with Brandon Parker. I think he's a very powerful guy, but because he loses that leverage battle by playing high, he struggles with push in the run game and with anchoring in the pass game. When he's going up against better competition. Obviously, he's another guy who's going to be making a huge leap up in competition. So I believe that Parker only played one FBS opponent throughout his 4 years in college. So this is going to be new to him. He had obviously dominant tape, so we'll just sort of see. But when I see an average athlete who struggles with leverage on the outside, my antennas start to go up, and I start to say, man, this guy, he's probably a right tackle, and I don't even know if I can cleanly project him to become a starter. And that's why I was lower on him than maybe some others, certainly.
Yeah, and I mean, that is our spot we needed to fill, was right tackle. That has been our Achilles heel for many a year now.
Take Orlando Brown, right? Yeah, I mean, Orlando Brown was there.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a guy that the offensive line might not Mike Tice, Cable would take, because from the past it seems like he just wants athletes who he can mold into. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked in Seattle, but he thinks it's gonna work here, and for some reason our head coach thinks so. So we'll see about that. We don't know. I mean, I don't want to, bash it too much. See what happens. But Mo Hurst in the 5th round. Sorry, Gavin, you were saying something?
No, I was just going to say that we've touched on the offensive tackles quite a bit, but obviously staying in the 3rd round, now it starts to get a bit more interesting. We took a guy called Arden Key, mega productive in 2016, fell off a little bit in 2017, has had his problems, but, when they get into an NFL building and they're surrounded by veteran players, you're hoping and praying that they can maintain their professionalism on and off the field. And I'm actually very high on Arden Key. If it wasn't for his problems, I would have graded him probably in the top 15 picks in the NFL draft this year. But obviously, due to stuff that went on, he obviously fell down a lot of teams' boards. And I think that if you look at it from a different standpoint, Khalil Mack needed help, number one, and bringing in a guy who's 6'6", about 240 pounds, I believe. I think he can rotate with Irvin and Mack, and if the interior line is solid this year, then you'll see a lot more production, because obviously there's more chaos being provided from the edge and then from the interior. So I think Arden Key could possibly be one of the steals of the draft if he maintains his off-field problems and keeps them in check.
And I agree. We spent a bit of time shredding the Raiders' first 3 picks. I quite like their second 3 picks. So, and you and me, we're pretty close to the same on Arden Key. He was a guy from covering college football. A couple years ago at this time, almost even last year at this time, I thought he'd be a first-round pick. But a couple years ago, we thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. And it didn't necessarily play out that way. But I still rated him 74th overall, and I was still downgrading him pretty heavily for durability and off-field and even on-field issues. Because I think his desire to play the game is also fair to question at this point. But even baking all those things into my evaluation, I ranked him 74th. He ended up going 87th. So, I mean, he's a good value, whatever way you slice it. And, going back to your point, if you took those issues out, he's absolutely a first-round talent. And what I like about Arden Key, very, very long off the edge, very twitchy off the edge. He's a great athlete. He is thin. He does have a thinnish kind of build. I don't even think he's 240 pounds, even though he's, 6'5" or 6'6". He's absolutely a boom or bust player. He's a guy, if everything comes together and he can add a little bit of weight, he's going to be a terror off the edge, because guys that are that quick, that twitchy, and I will even say that productive, you go back and you look at Arden Key's numbers in the limited games he played at LSU, he had, if you're talking about tackles for loss per game played, his ratio would be very high. Now, I didn't stack the board, or come up with those numbers or whatever, but he put up a lot of TFL at LSU. So you just, with Arden Key, it's basically 2 questions. Is the light going to go on for the person? Is he going to stay out of trouble? Is he going to dedicate himself to the game? Is his motor always going to be running high when he's on the field? So that's question number 1. And then question number 2 is, will his body betray him? or is he going to become more durable? Because he struggled